Okay, imagine this for a second. Picture an ancient human, right? Totally baffled by, say, a sudden storm or maybe some weird illness going around.
Uh-huh.
What's their first instinct? Probably blame the village chief, maybe. Or perhaps some spirit they think they've upset.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It's a very human thing, isn't it? Looking for someone or something to point the finger at.
Exactly. We instinctively look for an external cause. Now, fast forward to today. If the weather goes sideways, we check the forecast, we look to meteorologists.
Right.
If we get sick, we see a doctor. We don't automatically blame the mayor for the flu. We look for, structural understanding,
I'll
knowledge.
try to understand the system behind it.
But here's the really interesting part. When we face these big, sticky problems, things like persistent poverty or why some whole societies just seem stuck, we often slip right back into that ancient thinking. We blame politicians or maybe some faraway enemy like it's all just bad luck or someone's fault.
Yeah, it's a default setting, almost.
But what if that's just wrong? What if the real issue is something deeper? Like Dr. Nimrod really suggests in the sources we're looking at today. He says, and this really struck me, poverty is not a failure of effort or will. It is the absence of design.
Wow, okay. Absence of design, that definitely shifts the perspective.
It does, doesn't it? And that really sets the stage for this deep dive. We're going to explore what Dr. Israeli calls the universal law of increasing complexity. ULIC for short.
ULIC.
Okay. He describes it as kind of the master blueprint, the rules that govern how any structures really rise up, stabilize, evolve, or just fall apart.
So it's not just about becoming complex, but staying complex. Like, how does it endure?
Precisely. Think about something like the Roman Empire. Incredibly complex for its time, right?
Absolutely.
Yet eventually it fragmented. It collapsed. So ULIC tries to get at the hidden structural logic. What actually determines if a complex system lasts or just disintegrates?
And that's exactly what we want to unpack today. What makes complexity stick around? What makes it resilient versus falling apart?
Yeah.
Our mission here is to give you a more rigorous framework for thinking about this. Something like how physics or biology uses structural logic. Move beyond just guessing, see the patterns underneath.
Okay, so let's get into this universal law of increasing complexity, ULIC. It lays out what's needed for complexity to last.
Yeah.
But here's the kicker, as the source points out. Just having complexity, even really advanced complexity, doesn't mean it's safe, doesn't guarantee survival. We've all seen intricate things emerge and then just crumble.
True. Happens all the time.
So the big question isn't just how do things get complex? It's what makes complexity endure, what allows it to adapt versus just collapsing under pressure. What's the difference maker?
And what's really fascinating, according to the source, is that it boils down to 4 essential ingredients. For complexity to be sustained under ULIC, you need these 4 things.
Okay, what are they?
Energy input, structured containment, purposeful direction, and outward flow. And crucially, these aren't just like nice ideas or philosophical points. No, they're described as structural prerequisites, like non-negotiable. The moment any system fails to keep all 4 of these going simultaneously, it starts to decline. It's baked into the structure.
Okay. Energy, containment, direction, flow. All 4, all the time. Got it. And to help explain this whole dynamic, the source brings in this term, Genordo.
Yeah, Genordo. It comes from Latin roots, generare, to generate, and ordo, which means order.
Okay.
But it's not like some mystical force. It's basically the name for the entire spectrum of how systems behave structurally. The whole range from collapse right up to sustained growth and transformation. It describes where a system sits on that scale.
So it's a way to map the health of a system based on those 4 conditions?
Exactly. And this Genordo spectrum really shows how those 4 ULIC conditions, the energy, the containment, the direction, the flow, how they unlock what the source calls emergence capability.
Emergence capability, meaning the ability to generate new things, adapt.
Precisely. The source is clear. When all 4 are present and working together effectively, then that emergence, that positive change, it becomes not only possible, but increasingly probable. And you see this pattern everywhere, it argues. Star formation, biological processes, ecosystems, even how civilizations develop and sustain themselves. It's the underlying logic of how things grow, stabilize, and keep going.
Okay, so Genordo isn't just one thing, it's a spectrum. And you mentioned poles, Minordo and Altordo.
That's right. And the source stresses these aren't 2 separate forces fighting each other. They're just different structural positions on the same continuum. It's all Genordo.
Right. So one end is breakdown, the other is flourishing. Can you break down those poles for us? Let's start with Minordo.
Sure. Minordo is the low end. It's where the system's coherence is basically disintegrated. Energy just leaks out, disperses. There's no direction left.
Like entropy.
Kind of, yeah. It extends that idea. Entropy usually applies to closed physical systems, right? Minordo applies that concept of breakdown, of losing the ability to transform to open systems as well, biological, social, economic. It's when a very architecture needed for rebuilding is lost.
Okay, so that's the bottom. Total structural failure. What about the other end, Altordo?
Altordo represents the highest expression of Genordo. It's where all four of those ULIC conditions, energy, containment, direction, flow, aren't just there. They're humming along together, synchronized.
So energy comes in and gets used effectively.
Right. Energy is absorbed, transformed productively. The structure holds it together. It's coherent, resilient. There's a clear, unified direction. And there's healthy outward flow, connecting it to the wider environment.
So it's not static like some perfect state.
No, not at all. It's highly dynamic. It's the state where systems are constantly generating new capabilities. They're adapting to change. They're sustaining that emergence over the long haul.
Can you give some concrete examples? How does this spectrum look in different areas?
Yeah, the source gives some great ones. Think physics. A stable star burning steadily, that's Altordo. It collapses into a supernova, that's Minordo,
Okay.
or chemistry. A stable, organized crystal lattice structure, Altordo. Compare that to just a chaotic gas, molecules bouncing everywhere with no coherence, Minordo.
Makes sense. What about life?
Biology, a living cell, metabolizing, repairing itself, Altordo. Necrosis, tissue death where structure breaks down, Minordo.
And societies.
Same logic. A prosperous, innovative nation that generally has its act together, aligning energy, structure, direction, flow. That's operating closer to Altordo. A failed state riddled with conflict, institutions collapsing, it's sliding deep into Minordo. Lost those four conditions.
Wow. So this spectrum isn't just a theory. It's presented as a diagnostic framework, grounded in stuff we can actually observe.
Exactly. It suggests collapse isn't some big mystery. It happens predictably when that internal coherence, those four conditions, break down. And peak performance, Altordo, isn't luck either. It's the result of keeping those four conditions aligned and working together.
Okay, so if it's a diagnostic framework, how do we actually use it? How does it become practical?
Well, that's the power of it. The Genordo spectrum gives you a clear, actionable way to look at any system. Could be a cell, like we said, or a business, a government agency, even an ecosystem. You can assess those same four ULIC elements.
Right. Energy, containment, direction, flow.
You assess those four to understand where the system is on that spectrum, and maybe more importantly, what's holding it back or pushing it forward.
And the source actually gives us 4 specific questions to ask. Pretty straightforward, but they seem quite profound when you think about them through this lens.
Okay, let's hear them.
All right. First, is there a consistent and sufficient flow of energy input? And that could be anything, right? Physical resources, money, human effort, information.
The fuel for the system.
Second, are there internal structured containment mechanisms? Things capable of actually absorbing that energy, channeling it, stabilizing it, not just letting it dissipate?
The internal plumbing, so to speak.
Okay. Third, is there a clear and shared purposeful direction? Does everyone know what the system is trying to do? An activity aligned?
The guiding compass.
And fourth, does the system have functioning pathways for outward flow? Can it release surplus, export its products or services, engage productively with the outside world?
The connection to the environment. Makes sense.
So those 4 questions are the diagnostic toolkit.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And the source goes on to explain what happens if one of these is weak or missing. It directly links it back to instability.
How so?
Well, think about it. Energy without containment. That's just chaos, right? Uncontrolled power.
Okay, yeah.
Structure without flow. That leads to stagnation, rigidity. Things get blocked up. Direction without enough energy. That's just wishful thinking. Abstraction, maybe frustration because you can't actually do anything.
Lots of plans, no power.
And flow without structure or purpose. That just leads to exhaustion, burning through resources, or eventual collapse because the effort isn't coordinated or sustained.
So any weak link in that chain, energy, containment, direction, flow, compromises the whole system.
That's the idea. But the flip side is also true. Meaning when all four are present and they're synchronized, working together, that's when systems don't just survive.
They thrive.
They thrive. They adapt, they evolve, they generate these higher order capabilities. Emergence happens. It's basically the blueprint for flourishing systems.
This really does change how you might look at huge problems like poverty or why some societies just stagnate or even why systems collapse.
Absolutely. It reframes them completely. Instead of seeing them as just bad luck or poor choices by individuals or even solely the result of external shocks,
Yeah.
you start to see them as structural breakdown, the absence or the weakening of one or more of those core ULIC conditions.
And it's often not sudden, you mentioned. It's more like a gradual decay.
Often, yes. Progressive structural breakdown. Things slowly stop working together. It's like we're back to that ancient human blaming the shaman when the real issue might have been, say, a breakdown in their irrigation system or their food storage methods, a structural failure they didn't see.
Okay, let's make this concrete. The source uses an example of a rural farming community. Let's apply the framework. They've got resources, fertile land, water, people willing to work. That sounds like potential energy input, right?
Definitely. The raw ingredients are there. But the source points out that poverty often persists anyway. So using the framework, we ask why. What about structured containment?
And what's the typical finding there?
Often it's weak or missing. A lack of effective internal architecture. Maybe their farming co-ops are poorly organized or non-existent. There are no good structures to channel that energy, the land, the water, the labor efficiently. So it just dissipates. Effort doesn't translate into proportional output.
Okay, so weak structure. What about purposeful direction?
Frequently fragmented. There might not be a shared vision or mission that unites their efforts. People work hard, maybe, but often on their own plots, without the coordination needed for larger-scale success. No strong collective goal pulling them forward.
Makes sense. And the last one, outward flow.
Often blocked. Maybe they lack reliable access to larger markets to sell their surplus, or they don't have partnerships to bring in new knowledge or investment. They can't effectively engage with the broader economy.
So they become a kind of closed loop. Energy goes in, but it can't be properly structured, directed, or released outwards productively.
Exactly. A closed loop with very limited capacity for transformation or growth. It's stuck.
And thinking about it that way, while it helps explain why so many development projects maybe don't stick.
It really does. External groups might come in and pour in money or tools or training, which is essentially adding energy input.
Right.
But as the source emphasizes, if the community lacks those internal structures, the containment, direction, and flow mechanisms to absorb, align, and extend that new energy.
It doesn't last.
It's often short-lived, yeah. Or sometimes that flood of new energy can even be destabilizing if the system isn't coherent enough to handle it. It's like pouring water into a leaky bucket, or maybe even blasting it with a fire hose when it can't cope.
So just adding energy isn't the answer if the structure isn't sound.
Precisely. And this leads to a really key insight from the source. Prosperity cannot be delivered from outside. It must be cultivated from within by strengthening all four generative conditions. You have to build the internal capacity.
That's a powerful reframe for development work.
It is. You can throw resources at a problem, but if the underlying structure of those four conditions isn't there to manage and direct that energy, it's likely to fail.
And does this apply at a bigger scale too, like whole nations?
Absolutely. The source argues that societies in deep crisis think persistent conflict, widespread corruption, collapsing institutions are almost always suffering from severe breakdowns in Genordo across all four conditions. Well, the energy of the population, their potential, might be misdirected into conflict or just suppressed by authoritarian rule. So weak or misused energy.
Okay.
The structures, government agencies, legal systems, economic institutions, might become rigid, hollowed out, or corrupt. They don't effectively channel energy anymore.
Right.
Direction often fragments completely. Competing factions, loss of national unity, no shared vision for the future.
And outward flow.
Often blocked by internal conflict, international isolation, or just a breakdown of trust needed for trade and cooperation.
So it's not usually one dramatic event causing collapse, but this gradual unraveling of all four conditions. The system loses its ability to hold itself together.
That's the picture it paints. A gradual loss of the capacity to sustain complexity.
Which then changes how we think about leadership in those situations, doesn't it?
It really does. If this model holds, then the role of leadership isn't so much about commanding complexity into existence or forcing a specific outcome. It's more subtle. It's about cultivating the conditions that make sustained emergence possible. Creating the environment where energy can flow, structure can form, direction can align, and connections can be made.
So good leadership enables the system to heal and grow itself, rather than dictating every step.
Something like that. And the source notes something interesting, where these conditions are already sort of present.
Yeah.
Even small, smart interventions can trigger big positive changes. But if the conditions are fundamentally broken, even massive investments might not achieve much lasting impact.
It really shifts the focus from just injecting resources to building that underlying capacity, from blame to design.
Exactly. From blame and guesswork to a more, well, systemic and structural understanding.
So let's try to wrap this up. This universal law of increasing complexity. What's the main takeaway for someone listening?
Well, I think it's that this isn't just an academic description of how the world works. It's presented as a potential blueprint for shaping it.
A practical tool.
Yeah, a practical tool. Something you can use to diagnose why things are breaking down in your community, your organization, maybe even broader societal issues, and crucially, to start thinking about how to design effective transformations.
Moving beyond the surface symptoms.
Right. It pushes us to stop attributing complex problems like poverty or stagnation only to things like bad luck or laziness or culture or external enemies. Those might play a role, sure, but ULIC urges us to ask the deeper structural questions first.
The engineer's question.
Kind of, yeah. The questions from a systems designer's playbook.
Yeah.
Is the energy flowing? Is the structure containing and channeling it? Is there a clear direction? Are there pathways for outward connection? These aren't fuzzy concepts. The source calls them measurable design parameters, concrete and practical.
So in a time like ours, with so much feeling unstable or fragmented, this law doesn't offer a single magic bullet solution.
No, definitely not. No magic answers here.
But it offers
What?
a compass.
A guiding compass, that's a good way to put it. It's a call, really, for all of us to maybe stop searching for that one simple fix, that one external savior or scapegoat.
And instead,
Start focusing on the hard work of designing and nurturing systems. Systems that hold energy with purpose, anchored in shared core values, that structure action with coherence, and that remain open to exchange with the broader world.
energy, structure, direction, flow, anchored in values.
Those are the principles. It's how nature builds enduring complexity, the source argues. And maybe, just maybe, it's how we need to think about rebuilding our societies, too. It's about getting the fundamental